thing.
Edgar Mitchell
They
would
all
have
loved it
too. Yes.
Yes, they loved it, and they felt it was completely accurate. So that was what I was really, really wanting them to say, that, yeah, this holds together, because the problem I had was scientists don't like to speculate about how different experimental evidence comes together.
Yes.
There was nobody for me to try to synthesize all of this, and that was the difficulty for me. I realized with a big, sharp intake of breath that I was going to have to be the one who synthesized this.
Yes.
And I was going to be because these guys like to just do their little experimental evidence. They don't want to speculate. So that job was going to have to be left to me. And that was the big scary thing of it.
But your discovery is the most important discovery in all of the history of science. To me, that's a fact. What else could be more important than this? And yet, even seeing that you could pull it all together and it works, didn't make any scientist say, okay, it's time to break down the wall of materialism. It's time to start looking at the whole truth. Nobody was brave enough to do that.
Well, it was, maybe it was difficult for them as scientists to do that. Right. I had nothing to lose.
Yes, but
I could just do that.
Lynn, this is important. What you did was important. And by now, everybody should understand that these things are true. It transforms everything about our lives. And it's a very short step from where you took people to where I can take people, which is that your mind is eternal. It's impossible for it ever to die. And the implications of that will transform the world. So given how close we are and how close you have been for almost 20 years, I am appalled that no young scientist has been brave enough to say, okay, let's see where this really goes, and get a Nobel Prize for it. I think the Nobel's waiting for the first person who picks up on this.
Well, you know what, Roberta? There are lots of young scientists who are doing this stuff. I get loads of letters from them. I mean, the field still sells very, very well. And I get letters from them saying this and that about how it inspired them to do something. But they keep their heads down, because the problem is, and this has always been the case, science advances one funeral at a time. And, the old guard, the people in charge, have a lot of vested interest in keeping the status quo. And so the people whose information rocks that, are oftentimes vilified. All of the heroes in my book, The Field, were attacked at one point or another, and some, they attempted to destroy them. And Fritz Popp, thankfully, he was treated like a criminal when he first discovered this thing about light. It was brilliant, brilliant stuff. Yes, and it took many years for scientists around the globe to start realizing he was onto something and to confirm it with their own studies. Nevertheless, it will take even more time for us to really acknowledge what he'd figured out. Yes. It will take many more years, even after his death. He didn't die. He should have been a Nobel Prize winner.
Yes. A lot of these people, frankly, should have been. And that day will come. As sure as the next day is going to dawn now, that day will come. It's just that Max Planck believed that it would happen not long after his death. And here we are. So much time has passed. And still science fights the truth. So everyone, please read The Field. And then I think you're going to want to read The Power of Eight, because The Power of Eight is how, if you have someone in your life that you love that has an illness or something you really hope will make happen, you can do this at home. I think that's the real takeaway. And when we come back, we're going to talk with Lynn more about how you can do this at home. And the fact that in reaching out and trying to help someone who's sick, or trying to heal the world in terms of peace, whatever you might be trying to do with your intention, the fact that you can do it and it will empower your own life and make your own life better. What could be better than that? That's better than watching TV and eating pretzels at the same time. So let's talk a little bit, Lynn, about how, if someone is thinking, hey, I want to do a Power of Eight experiment, but before I buy the book, I'd like to know a little bit more about what I'd have to do. How do those work?
They're really simple. There are certain techniques involved with intention, being an intention master, and I put them all in the book. just to give you one idea, one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they're not specific. They don't tell the universe what they want. They will say something very general like, I want to be rich. But
Yes.
they don't really mean that. What they mean is, I need $20,000.50, or I need to buy a new car, or it's not about the money, it's that I hate my job and I want to change my job, or I'm just working too hard and I want to spend more time with my grandkids or my children, or more time on my hobby or with my loved ones, whatever it is. What you need to do is specify exactly what you want. So the first thing that's really important is to figure out what you want. And I always like to use a reporter's list, because I am a journalist at heart. We were always taught, when you start off a story, you've got to do the 5 W's and H. And that is who, what, when, where, why, and how. And if you use that as a little blueprint for what you ask for your intentions, you don't have to put all of that in great detail. But if you have you, and what is it you want, and when you want it, and exactly, where it's going to be, and how you might get it. Now, the how may come to you in different ways, but it's important just to be that specific. When you leave the universe to fill in the gaps, it may fill in something you don't want. So that seems to be the most important thing. But just for people to do this, you just need to get 7 other people, ideally 8, but it doesn't have to be. It can be 5, it can be 11. Get a group of people together, or if you don't have 7 other friends, you can join my website, lynnmctaggart.com, and /forum. Join our forum, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of Power of 8 groups setting up in all kinds of time zones. So either you can join one in your time zone, ask to join, or you can advertise that you want to set one up in your time zone. So it works just as well virtually or together. And the main thing is just to meet virtually or together. You hold hands, you set a common intention, you hold it. And there are a variety of techniques, as I say, that are that require a little bit more to get into. But basically, it's a very simple thing of holding an intention for about 10 minutes.
So these meetings, and they can be online, don't need to be more than 10 minutes long?
No, the intention itself, 10 minutes. And then the rest of the meeting can be deciding on your intention statement and talking about what's happened to you during the week and what other intentions you want. And here's the important thing, Roberta. It doesn't just have to be for health. People use our Power of 8 groups for everything, for fixing relationships, for changing careers or helping with a startup business, for finances. So many of our people have had amazing windfalls with it, for changing their life purpose. Loads of people, when they want to find out the next path, will use our intention groups. But the biggest and most important thing is to meet regularly. My groups, I studied a batch of people for an entire year to see if things in their life would change. And I got 250 people together in 2015, and I taught them for a while, and then I put them into groups and had them meet for a whole year. And of the 150 who continued to meet regularly, week by week by week, pretty much 100% of them had major life changes, whether it was health, relationships, anything like that. And it didn't have to be when they were just the receivers. That many of them were getting amazing changes when they were senders. I give you an example of a guy called Wes, who was a Vietnam vet. He was studying to be a doctor at university when he got drafted in the final years of the war, where you couldn't have a draft deferment for college. So he had to go, and it was so traumatic for him that he came home deeply depressed, never finished college, had a spiral of bad luck, even found the love of his life, but then lost her to cancer, his second wife.
Oh,
and
Lord.
It was an awful story. By the time I met him at 65, he'd given up and kind of said, what's the use? It was hard for him to even get up and make breakfast. But Wes participated in a group that I set up in Denver, And he just did one intention for a woman with stage 4 cancer. He was going to put himself forward, but he felt she had worse situation. So he just sent. And the next day, he had these extraordinary heightened senses. Suddenly everything seemed beautiful. The sky more blue than he'd ever imagined it, the grass greener, and just all of his senses were open, and he was also filled with joy. But then the most amazing thing happened that night when he had a dream, but it was almost like a vision, of meeting his 19-year-old self on the campus that he was at. And his 19-year-old self kind of communicated with him, not with words so much, but just a feeling that it was all okay, that he still had time. And he's a different person.
Did he go to college? Did he finish college now?
No, but he started 90-minute workouts. I mean, this is a guy who could barely get himself out of bed. 90-minute workouts. He is filled with smiles and joys. He's participating in his church all the time. He's working with these Power of 8 groups. He's trying to write some things. He's a totally changed person. And that was from one experience, transformational experience.
Are you serious? I just cannot. That is beautiful. So that tells you that not only can you help others by doing this, but perhaps most of all, you can help yourself. And for many people, I hear from so many people as to you who are in ruts of various kinds. What a glorious, glorious way to get out of that rut. Well, everyone, Lynn has another interview to do right after this one. So we're going to, bid goodbye and just say, Lynn, you are terrific. I'm so grateful for the work you do. I don't know if enough people tell you that. Your life's work is a beautiful testimony to the truth, and it is a beautiful gift to the world. So please consider yourself hugged, even though you're across the pond. And we'll be talking again very soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Roberta.
Thank you so much. Everyone, this has been Secret Reality with Roberta Grimes. I just love that woman, I have to tell you. I'm so glad you could be with us today and share Lynn. Never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being, as Lynn just proved yet again. You never began, you never will end, and when you really understand all the implications of that fact, it's going to change everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest is going to be your host. As Secret Reality has grown in listenership over the past 5 years, we've moved periodically to different home stations. What happens is people contact me and make me an offer I can't resist. And we've always, of course, kept our primary previous outlets, but we're about to try it again. I was just complaining to Lynn about how I never should have agreed to this because now it's live radio again, which never has worked for me, but that's all right. Next week, we'll be experimenting with live radio on W4CY. And since we'll have some new listeners then, I'm going to do what I very seldom do and share my history with them and at the same time with you. I'm not sure what I'll be saying, but if you have thoughts, of course, I'll be glad to hear them. But especially if you've joined us more recently and begun to share this voyage with us, you might want to be there next week when I'll try to help you put all of the stuff we talk about, a huge reality, into some perspective. This week, our guest for the second time has been with the extraordinary, this has been perfect, frankly, I just love this woman, extraordinary British consciousness researcher, Lynne McTaggart. Mainstream scientists, as she proved yet again, are still stuck in the nonsense that our brains somehow create consciousness. But researchers like Lynn, who is as disciplined and as thorough as any scientist, she's eons ahead of what these people are doing, and she continues to develop for us more and more a core understanding of the amazing powers of our mind. Her 2001 book, which is the major classic in this field, is The Field, The Quest for the Secret Force of the Universe. I think you should read that one and also read Your Eternal Self, which Craig Hogan put out in 2008. Those two books together will transform your life for the better. And her terrific 2017 book, The Power of 8, Harnessing the Miraculous Energies of a Small Group to Heal Others, Your Life, and the World. That's kind of a big title, but it fits the title. If you're interested in trying to transform your own life and help others, this is an ideal place to start. Lynne McTaggart's wonderful books will help you to understand at last at the core of your being that you really are eternal. Your mind really is that powerful. Of course, you know I have a variety of nonfiction books, Liberating Jesus, My Thomas, The Fun of Dying, The Fun of Staying in Touch, and other fun books too, and also 2 books for children. If you ever want to talk about any of my books, or if you want to talk about anything at all, you always can contact me